I guess you don't need it anymore.
All right, I'll call to order tonight's Committee of the Whole of the City of Gahanna Council. It is Monday, March the 14th. It is 7 o'clock. First item on our agenda for tonight, first, are there any amendments or additions to tonight's agenda? Okay, I think we're good. The first item then on our agenda for tonight is a discussion of the 2022 Sidewalk Program proposal. And I have our City Engineer and Director of Public Service ready to speak to us.
Good evening. I'll take this table so I can put my laptop up and actually read things here. So this first item is a discussion of the 2022 Sidewalk Maintenance Program. So this would be, the proposal that's attached to this is for the second ever sidewalk maintenance program that the city would conduct. What is active right now, the 2021 sidewalk program. And just for the benefit of our new council members and just to recap the last discussion, we are in a multi-year contract with EMH&T to provide consulting services for our sidewalk programs. And we got a bit mired in the last conversation about what the terms of that contract were and how long it would run. But for the sake of simplicity, there are effectively 2 program years that council saw fit to allow this contract to cover. The first being last year's and this year's. Each of those programs has 3 years within it. So we have a inspection year, a construction year, and then a warranty year. So from the moment this work would begin for this proposal, we would be doing inspections of sidewalks in 2022, a construction program in 2023, and then warranty work and inspection closeout in 2024. At our last conversation, we decided to bring this back for discussion with council, to have a conversation before moving forward again to reauthorize their scope of services for the 2022 program. It's worth noting that what you see in here, there's a program area further on in the bottom of the attachment that shows a map of a draft 2022 sidewalk program area. That is a draft at this time. If we move forward with this contract, we would be coming back with action to adopt a program area that will likely resemble that map. Really what we want to bring forward tonight is just what this would encompass, what we've learned so far about operating this program for the first 3 months of the year, and have a conversation with you about what path we might want to move forward and get your feedback about the program as a whole. Currently, we're in an inspection phase of the 2021 program area. We're closing that out. If you attended our town hall or heard about the town hall earlier, you would have learned some of what we're doing and the arch of the program as a whole. So far, we've really gotten into the inspection a bit, and that has helped us guide this proposal for the next year's services, this year's services, I should say. The cost itself of this contract is for the administration of the sidewalk program. It's not for construction. And the way our ordinance is structured, the way our program is planned to operate is that it's funded through capital dollars. And the city pays upfront for all costs associated with administering the program and completing the construction. And then the cost of sidewalk repair would be assessed to the adjoining property owners and recouped through a property assessment. These costs in this proposal are costs borne by the city of administrative costs for the time spent operating the program and completing the inspections. The cost per parcel is comparable to what we saw with last year's program, so we're seeing some consistency between the two. And I guess with that, we're going to open it for discussion from council. Any questions or comments or feedback you may have?
Okay, Mr. Renner?
Yes, thank you so much for bringing this forward. My little review, if you will, of the 2021 sidewalk program has actually been met very well. Residents overall, at least on the west side. There was a little bit of churn, but it seems to be working very well. And I want to thank you guys for going out and meeting with residents when they had questions or said, hey, I don't want this or didn't want it done. So thank you. The question I have is, this looks like it's a much more sidewalk area than the first one. Can you give me relative ideas about that?
Yeah, I can. Excuse me. So the first year's program, the capital budget funding for that was a smaller fraction than what this year's program would be. So we initially set out to do a smaller program in the first year. One, because it was new, and we wanted to make sure we had a handle on the scope of work. And two, because when setting the budget in 2020 for the 2021 cycle, I don't think we had a firm understanding of kind of where exactly we would be long-term with the program. So this year, the capital funding is about 3 times what it was for the 2021 program. So it will be serving 651 parcels is the draft number. The 2021 program was serving just under 230 parcels.
Okay. And then in your introductory, you were saying that this is a draft and that there's going to be some review, and then there's going to be a final. What types of things are going into the review that might mitigate or change this?
A number of things, and it's a good question. So on page 7 of the proposal, it's called Exhibit A, there's a map, and it shows some of the areas that were prior year street programs, where streets have been maintained in some fashion, and then we're going back to those areas to conduct sidewalk maintenance. Some of those streets don't have sidewalk on both sides. For example, we have Havens Corners Road between Helmbright and Hamilton Road. There is no sidewalk on the north side of that road for most of the stretch. So as we focus on review of the map itself, we're going to get a better understanding of how much sidewalk truly is there in this program. Another one of the factors is that we hope to get some accurate construction costs for concrete work, because we're trying to fit the size of the program to the budget we have for concrete repair. We have out to bid right now our street program for the 2022 street maintenance program. It will give us some understanding of today's dollar costs per concrete work. If those costs go up or down, we will change the program area accordingly to fit the most area we can with the budget we have.
Okay. Good luck. Thank you. Lincolnshire, at least on the west side, is probably the most aggressive. That long stretch, it definitely needs it. So I'll be watching that very well. But thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. McGregor?
This is only for repairing sidewalks, it's not building new ones, correct?
That is correct, and yeah, thank you for asking that. I meant to mention that. This is a maintenance and repair program, so it doesn't fill in gaps between neighborhoods where there may not be sidewalk. It doesn't build new sidewalk along streets. It's maintaining existing sidewalk infrastructure.
Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. But just to clarify, if a panel's determined that this just needs to be utterly replaced, that's happening as part of this process, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And then, other thing I want to say on this is the town hall that, I don't even remember when that was. Was that end of January or early?
A decade ago.
It was a decade ago.
I think it was February 1st.
February 1st. Thank you for doing that. That was probably one of the best community engagement events that I've seen, and so I would challenge the city and the administration to make sure that we're proactive in getting the word out and doing more of those on that, because it was really very helpful for everyone, I thought. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions unless anybody else has any follow-up. Obstacles that you may be encountered through this program, could you share with us some? I'm curious to know how it's been going with maybe absent landowners or landowners who haven't been responsive. Could you share with us some other some on that and maybe about other obstacles.
Yeah, so general overarching obstacles, we'll start with that first. It's the first year we've done this, and it's the first year that EMH&T has assisted Gahanna. So they've done work in a lot of other communities in Central Ohio, but learning our community and our streets has been partly a challenge. You mentioned Lincolnshire and the need for sidewalk replacement on Lincolnshire. What we knew going into this, but what's become very evident is that each of our neighborhoods have different challenges physically with the sidewalks. Some of them are older, some of them were constructed in different manners. And so part of our review and part of this proposal includes going out with our consultants and our staff and walking through these different neighborhoods and trying to get a handle on what surprises might be out there as we start doing the program. So we're learning a bit about how best to operate this in Gahanna. We haven't yet gotten to a point where landowners are communicating with us directly about whether they'll be doing work or what the cost of that work will be. We've had some feedback from folks who've received our notices, but whether it's an absentee landowner or a tenant or a homeowner, it hasn't really shown itself to be problematic. One of the benefits of the way we operate this program is that the work will occur regardless. If someone fails to respond at all, the city will still go out, maintain those sidewalks, and eventually file an assessment against that property. And so we hope to avoid some of the challenges of, say, tracking somebody down and making sure that they are aware of what's going on. And we are communicating thoroughly, which Mr. Weaver, thank you for the recognition there. But so far, the landowner dynamics haven't come into play in a major obstacle kind of way.
And engagement so the 2021, I think there was some West Side focus for the 2021 program, and I thought there was maybe one other program. Mayfield.
High Meadow.
High Meadow area.
And the cul-de-sacs and
Yeah.
dead-end streets off of High Meadow. Yeah.
So those are fairly concentrated to kind of two neighborhoods. What type of engagement, like Mr. Weaver referenced, what type of engagement will you be doing with Bryn Mawr and Rocky Fork area, Rathburn Woods? I'm blanking on the name of the neighborhood just to the east, or to the west of Rathburn Woods.
Hunter's
Ridge, yeah. Yeah.
So similar, we're going to follow the same tactics, I think. But that's one thing that we're feeling pretty good about is how we're going about initiating the communications. So we are sending mailers out to every parcel in the program area once it's determined. And they get in that mailer a brochure, links to our website that gives additional information. And I do think we're going to be doing a town hall probably every year to give people a chance to come and have questions answered. The town hall that we held, we only invited those that were in the program area, so it only went to the Empire Drive and High Meadow Drive corridors. So going forward, we would be inviting everyone from every neighborhood to attend that. That's part of the sidewalk program. And then our staff, we're fortunate that we have some good committed staff members to go out and meet with residents and hear their concerns. They'll be doing that same thing going forward in the other neighborhoods as well.
And the town hall from February 1st is also still available for viewing on the YouTube channel. That's not going anywhere. So it's a good informational piece, even if they were not in the 2021 program area. But to Mr. Moorhead's point, continuous town halls as we finalize program areas is something that we plan to continue to do.
Excellent. Thank you. That's really helpful for us to have those details. I appreciate it. Okay. Anything else on this item? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you back up here, I guess, in a little bit.
And we'll be back with an item to adopt a sidewalk program area that reflects the Exhibit A of this map here in the coming weeks as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, the second item on the agenda is more or less a placeholder. I don't have anything formal for tonight, but I did want to make sure that the door was open if there were any specific questions. Following the presentation at the last Committee of the Whole on Fair Housing Policy, I have been, I guess, taking your questions, and Ms. Hoffman, who's here tonight, also asked some questions at the last formal meeting, so I'm working on getting answers to those questions, so.
The only thing I had was, when you get you were getting some information on our zip code, but there's a lot of our zip code that is not in Gahanna, and there's part of our zip code that is not 432, so if there's a way to weed out who is actually Gahanna residents that are within those zip codes.
Yeah, I'll do my best on trying to narrow in on that type of data.
Thank you.
We don't want to leave out the New Albany postal code.
Or the Black Lake. There's a Black
Correct,
Lake
or the
finger
Black-
that is actually Gahanna. So
Yep.
people don't realize Gahanna does not have its own zip code.
Right. We do not have our own.
Tried that
We
one
do not.
time. I believe that you spoke to this last time we discussed it, but could you maybe, for the record, just kind of explain a little bit about how doing this on a local level would differ and/or strengthen the Civil Rights Act?
Yes, I will take, I am planning on giving some additional information about how it is particularly impactful to a local community from a business perspective and an economic development perspective, but also how it helps to create that fabric of the region to have consistent policy throughout the region. So I'm working on putting that together too.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the feedback tonight. I appreciate it. All right, the next, under item 3, we have 2 items to discuss. Communication and public input. Mr. Weaver has put forward a proposed amendment to council rules. Mr. Weaver, do you want to share with us?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair, I appreciate it. So there's been a lot of discussion on this point, and just to sort of put a broad recap on where we are, this began with sort of a request to allow those who were unable to come down to council chambers for a meeting to participate in a more formal way, I should say, outside of just emailing council or sending letters, and have that be reflected. Based on comments provided by my colleagues, and one in particular I took very near to my heart, Ms. McGregor's comment that comments outside of the meeting are not minutes. They did not occur at the meeting. And I found that point to be very valid. So what I am putting forward here, in essence, because I do believe there needs to be some form of a more formal mechanism to allow and encourage constituent participation for those who are unable to come down on a 7 o'clock meeting on a Monday. The goal of this was to provide more of a formality and a searchable way for others viewing or wanting to learn more about other public comments, rather than having to go to the clerk directly and say, hey, did anybody submit an email to any of the council members on item 1, 2, 3? Thanks to our wonderful deputy clerk and our former clerk for all of their research, reaching out to the Clerks Association and other communities. We did got a lot of feedback. So in short, what I am attempting to propose here is that individuals should provide the same information that we require on our speaker slip for those coming down during the public comment portion during a council meeting. That should be made available online and/or submitted via an email, which would include indicating what particular items they're wishing to speak to. with similar constraints for time. We allow 3 minutes for public comment here. Quick little search indicated that's roughly 450 words spoken, or typed out, excuse me. But doing so would also put the onus and accountability on the constituent to provide information, so we know who that comment's coming from, and we can verify that they're a Gahanna resident, and encourage that. So I think that's my synopsis on that. Happy to answer any questions. I'm amenable to further feedback on this as well.
Mrs. McGregor?
The question I still have is, how do you verify that the question came from the person whose name is on the slip? I mean, because I have an email that does not identify my name at all, and so if I put that email on there, it could be Tom Smith, it could be Angela Anderson, it could be anybody, because I could say that I live at a certain address, and it's not that person at all.
So, very valid point. And this is why I think I included in there that it would be up to the president's discretion, and for which, if there was reason to object to that comment, the auditor's website is a good tool. I understand we don't know necessarily firsthand all, 36,000 residents in Gahanna. One thing that, when you did mention that, I remember in law school, they talked about just the onus of stating your name and when you go to swear an oath to testify on the stand, that they've done research that shows that increases the veracity of the information versus not requiring the oath and not requiring anyone to state their name. And I'm hopeful and perhaps overly optimistic that it would be a similar situation here.
I guess that's still, to me, that still puts, somebody has to make a decision whether we're going to accept it or not based on, and somebody else has to spend the time to research whether it's really that person or not. And, it just.
Understood.
I know we had briefly touched on the ability to submit information through Granicus, and what was the outcome of that discussion, research? Do we know? Okay.
I did look into the e-comment of Granicus. It's an online tool that makes participation easy and convenient for residents and staff. It's where residents can review the agenda items in detail and indicate their position on an item from any device. The issue is, though, per Director Schultz, is that this will not work. It is not compatible with our AV and streaming technology that we have installed here in Chambers. So it's not compatible at all.
Okay.
I do not personally know of another tool out there.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, can you expand on that a little bit? What does that mean that it's not compatible with our AV tools? That seems to suggest that we're looking for a real time, and I don't think that's the interest at all.
One of the functions of, what was it called, Pam?
E-comment.
E-comment is the real-time interaction with the public as the meeting is going on, and the polling of the audience, if you would, as to how they feel about a particular matter, which then could inform the body as to maybe how to vote or something like that. So that was one of the features. That would not be compatible with the AV system in real time. However, the poll itself, once concluded, yeah, that would be just through regular, the web interface of Granicus and such, I would imagine. A little bit further research would need to be conducted to know that for certain.
So we could use it, it just wouldn't be in that real-time function,
Correct.
possibly. Okay.
Wait, for clarity, are we talking about a couple of different features that's in this thing? So it doesn't just capture comments, it sounds like it has a polling feature, or is it just a polling feature?
I believe it's both. It's one and the same, I would think. You can put up a poll, And then you can also comment, similar to, a Facebook poll that you would put up that says, are you in favor, for, or against, and then comment. It did not seem, based on the conversation at the last meeting, that this was the intent of what you folks were talking about.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So, if I may, for just a moment, not looking for something in real time here, and certainly I'm not trying to propose that. What I'm trying to do, or what I'm hoping this will do, is allow for, ultimately, if an individual is at home and searching on our agenda and clicks on, item 2022-0077, among the other attachments listed under that item would be, a document of public comments received specific to that item. So not anything in real time.
Right. I have a question. Do we have a chat part of this, chat part of our stuff that people can, if they're at home, can,
The chat function is turned off, but yes, it is there. It can be easily turned on.
so if you turn on the chat section, they can come in and type in whatever they want to or say what they want to. And we did that a whole lot, quite honestly, during our commission meetings at Morpsey. We had, the chat was big because there were, we had like 100 people coming.
I think the difficulty with that is that takes away all accountability because there is no credentialing at all.
Oh, there is credentialing. You have to be able to be on the thing.
Not on,
Ours-
but ours is streamed on YouTube, so we wouldn't be able to do that through YouTube.
You'd have to do it through Microsoft.
You have to do it through a different mechanism, yes, not through
Yes.
YouTube.
Yes, exactly. And our team isn't part of our things, teams.
Teams would do it, Zoom would do it, whatever,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
type function that you use at what you call it. It makes the
It's just
it makes
a-
the administration of the meeting a little bit more cumbersome because now people need to log in and those types of things, which is
Well, that
something.
gives our clerks something to do and, just makes it easier. No, I just wanted to bring that up because the chat is used quite a bit, especially on people virtual.
Yes. Mr. Weaver.
One other comment that was raised was, there was concerns about us as council members or as the clerk reading someone else's emails or words in whatever form into the record, and just by reading someone else's words, that puts an interpretation on them. My background in theater, yes, it does. So I took that to heart and wanted to avoid that. And I know some of the communities that the clerk's office forwarded to us do something like that. And so I just wanted to be clear that concern was raised, and I wanted to avoid that just from the standpoint of, we don't want to put meaning on somebody else's words that might not be there.
I appreciate all the work that you've put into this, and I know that I appreciate where you're coming from with this. I think overall, if under 6.32, if we were to maybe, ultimately, I guess what I'd like to see is, one, I'd like to see an electronic form and so it's not just email, but like a contact us form where it has required fields. And I think that can be built onto our website pretty easily. And then it would concentrate things in one direction. And then, if that information had been put through that portal, I think I would be more comfortable with that because it makes it equivalent to a speaker slip. Sure. And then we can also limit the words in the text box as well. I believe within that function, we can kind of create a character limit. So if we were able to do that, I think that would be fantastic. We'd have to make sure that it was also ADA accessible, I think, so that it could be compatible with screen readers and that kind of thing. And then my other comment on this is, as you mentioned, I think as long as there was some type of discretion, whether it's and I'm open to how the rest of council feels about this, whether it's president's discretion or whether it's one council member's objection or whether it's a majority vote, potentially excluding an email that was didn't serve a legitimate purpose or harm outweighed the benefit to the discussion, something to that effect. I know that there's already the ability to exclude things that are threats or hateful or intimidating, things like that. But I don't know how the rest of council feels about that. That's my feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Burnett.
So I think these are great ideas. I really enjoy being able to discuss with my colleagues and explore this space. And so having an interface for a website where people can actually add their comments and limit it, you know, as you suggested, I think it's fine. My question is then, where are we still talking about harboring it? Are we going to put it as a link on the agenda? Or are we going to put it as a link just on the website? How is it going to be connected to be more specific, I think I would prefer that we have comments. Comments are going to come in two different ways. One, they're going to be overarching. There's something about the city that they want or they want to see. Or two, there's something specific on the agenda, right? And where do we park that information? I am diametrically opposed to putting it on the agenda as capturing it as minutes. But if we refer it to somewhere that it's on the website, I think that's fine. As long as, you know, especially if comments are reflective of some ordinance or some resolution that's under consideration, there's a ability to create a link to that in Legistar. That's further down the road, but I guess. But that's how I'm seeing this. Is that what you're suggesting?
So, very well taken, Mr. President. And as I indicated at the beginning, I have grown to be very opposed to including this as an item in the minutes because it didn't necessarily transpire at the meeting. As you were speaking, it occurred to me that many items, the majority of items that that are under council's purview reoccur at several meetings. And so perhaps the agenda itself may not be the best vehicle for harboring this, whereas instead perhaps a separate item on the page where item by item number would be more accessible, more easily found, and better suited to holding any comments.
Is this starting to look like maybe a monthly report of communications received by council office? And if so, is that going to create what is that? I feel like what does that look like? I don't know. I feel like we're coming full circle in some ways. And I feel badly that we're not addressing the problem identified.
We're starting to chase our tail a little bit.
So if there's a consensus that these are not minutes because they didn't occur at the meeting, and there's also seems to be consensus that it wouldn't go on an agenda because it may not necessarily relate to an agenda item, then I think the question comes back to maybe a public records maintenance question. And is that fair? Or, I know we're still looking for ways to originally this was ways to field comment in electronic hearing of visitors is sort of where this originally started.
Yes, that was the original intent.
Yeah, but we got away from it.
Is there a way to create a file? I'll just use that word because I'm not, that says sidewalk ordinance. Comments submitted by the public. Not minutes, but a separate thing. And somebody could search sidewalk ordinance and it would say, these are comments submitted for this ordinance. Or another one, I don't know, whatever, something, street repairs. And then comments submitted, through the website. And do that, and it wouldn't have anything to do with the minutes, but it would be a separate thing of comments, on an agenda item or an ordinance, by ordinance or something like that, and it would be a certain, because, they can search a function, by word or, I don't know, is it possible to do that?
So it sounds like creating something that's more searchable by the public and by us that isn't necessarily a public records request.
Right.
Yeah.
It would just be, people that can't come, they couldn't come, but here's their comment. Somebody had a comment to make. I don't know if I don't know if you can do that. I
Yeah.
suppose you can, but it wouldn't have anything to do with the minutes. It would just be a separate file of comments on ordinances, residents' comments on ordinances.
Well, it sounds to me, if I may, it sounds to me that we're getting close to creating something and maybe gathering requirements, right? And so maybe that's what we do, is we put together a bullet list of requirements and then send them over to Kevin and say, okay, Kevin, give us an idea about, here's the, and here's the list of requirements, and then is there something available, or can somebody create something like that? Does that sound amenable then? Because I feel like we almost have everything before us, based on what Councilwoman McGregor and what Councilman Weaver has actually provided, and then the other comments that they're in.
I think what Councilwoman McGregor was just saying was part of the original intent. The only clarification, or I don't even want to say necessarily difference, that I was aiming for was that, typically at least when I search through our agendas or our legislation, I go through the agenda because I know which date it's being discussed, and click on an item, and that pulls up the ordinance and any attachments, exhibits that are submitted. And my goal in crafting this proposed rule change was to have that separate file of those public comments as a separate attachment within that ordinance.
Okay, so then therefore, that's a requirement.
Could you put a thing, like you say, but say, see file A for additional comments, or something like that, it still wouldn't be part of the comments wouldn't be part of the minutes, but and somebody could search it separately from the agenda, because people don't know what date it is. They know that there's a sidewalk ordinance, and they're
Right.
not gonna know what date to look for it, but they could search by topic.
That's
don't
very
know.
well received. I would be very good with that.
Get a PDF file.
So let's do that. Let's create a bullet list of requirements, capturing all these items, and then give it to Kevin. With the mayor's permission.
Sure, Ray and I were discussing your options right now. We're evaluating them.
Well, actually, we could use Facebook.
Yeah.
We get those anyway, those little things comments that people might want to say. So you could take them off of Facebook and put them in a file.
All right, our next item, Mr. Renner has proposed agenda items, I think, an amendment to the agenda items.
Yeah, so this came where the realization that our agenda for our regular meetings is actually hard-coded in our rules, and that a president doesn't have the ability to just create a new category, a new item. And so, along with the realization that our council rules of procedure actually defines what item J, it says representatives. It does not define what representatives are, but you can probably infer that it's representatives to a set of committees And it lists 4. And so if, in the doing of business, when we expand and want additional representatives, council on various things, we have no ability really to put them, we could put everything under representatives. Because by the definition in the council rules of procedure, we could put everything there. Or we can create a new subheading and say other committees as assigned, which is what I was talking about before. But it really forces us to look harder at the council rules of procedure, and I said J, I apologize. It's L in our council rules of procedure under 6.2, order of business. And so I feel like I'm sort of stuck as your president, and as we have other committees, where do we put them? Can we simply change our rules, add another heading that says other committees as assigned, and therefore allowing us the flexibility of growing and adding other committees that representatives of council are going to be on, keeping intact the item L, the representatives of just those 4 items? Or do we broaden item L?
The way I read 6.20, the second sentence, the agenda order for regular meetings shall be at the discretion of the council president, but should include the following. So I think I see that as you having the ability to flex this you think it would be appropriate. There is that pesky misplaced comma, but
Those are pretty popular, aren't they?
they are.
So you're saying that your view is that as it's written, there's enough wiggle room,
Yeah.
to borrow a word, but what? Are you saying to expand item L or to go ahead and add another heading that says?
I think
Because
that-
we did have, Pam, who did you talk to? And
Mr. Malarski.
About what? I was trying to find the
I know,
paragraph.
it's the doldrums of council rules, right? So what we're talking about is item 6.2, the order of business, and it suggests what an agenda item looks like.
Yes.
When I started exploring this, and I asked Pam to ask you or Matt, is do I have the authority to add another category to this? And because I was going to say other committees as assigned. And she was told that, no, it's written hard in stone, that this is what it is.
It's pretty specific. It says there's 4 representatives.
Right.
I mean, so it looks like there's 4 representatives unless council approves other representatives.
Okay, and so that's the real crux here.
Right.
So how do we expand upon this to be able to have the ability, because that's too limiting, obviously, and we have people who are going to be serving. So do we add it to L, or do we add another heading that says other committees as assigned?
Can I ask a question? When Karen and Mike and I we did a facilities assessment, we were a committee. We did a couple years ago, but I don't remember how that, if we had, it was a committee created.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike and Karen and I were on it, so how did we, I don't remember if we'd given a report where we would have given it. It was a separate committee created by the president of council at the time.
And we never gave any. I don't think we gave reports, did we, on that?
I think at the end we did.
Yeah, we have had subcommittees, and I don't remember where those were.
No, that's what I was saying. I don't remember it either. Maybe Mike would, but I don't remember how, maybe we never gave anything at council, but I'm sure we had a final report.
We went through a whole lot of things.
I'm sorry. I understand what Ray's saying, that there's 4 categories, but we have 2 representatives to the CIC. And if this is coming down to the issue of whether we have 2 representatives to MORPC, that's not inconsistent with our agenda.
I would, well, to CIC's point, I would say it's actually in the bylaws of the CIC's organizational structure that there are 2 city council representatives. So that's maybe an apple and an orange.
Well,
Just throwing
I
that
guess
out,
from
but-
my perspective, though, if we're talking about what's specifically in our agenda, it doesn't say that there can only be 1 that reports back to council.
My understanding was, the question was, can you only have these 4 groups of representatives?
Okay.
That's what my answer was for.
Okay.
You can't have a sewer representative, looking at you, President Renner.
Don't all fight
But-
over that.
But you, yeah. But if you're saying how many can be in the representatives, it does not say that.
Okay.
Well, so I am searching for a way to actually make this a little bit more future-proof, if you will, so that we have the ability to add. And I don't remember, and Nancy, that's a very good question, how subcommittees were actually reported and documented. I don't remember right now. So I guess I need general direction then. Is under L, do we go for expanding that, or do we create another heading that says other committees as assigned?
It seems like another agenda item would be, then it could be a committee, an additional representative.
Then it can be, that's right.
You know, other reports as required by the president of council. Or
Right.
something
Yeah.
like that.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
You confused me a bit there. L's representatives, committees down under section 7. Are you referring to committees, or are you referring to representatives?
So I am talking about under 6.2. Yeah, thank you for that question. Under 7, that's under our, different various
Yeah.
committees and that kind of thing.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
referring
This
to
is-
representatives then?
That's right, representatives and under our normal agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This wasn't the way I planned on spending my 35th wedding anniversary, but that's, I'm
Oh, is that
I'm a little
today?
distracted, yes.
That is what we were
Yeah,
talking
that's what
about
we were talking
before.
about before, yeah.
Can we maybe
Well,
table?
congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
May I make a comment in terms
trying to
of
find the
the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission? It's done by census. The representatives that come are Mayor Jadwin and myself. Now, if somebody wants to come and do something like Trent or whatever, that's fine. But it's not part of the basis of what we're there for. And I know you disagree with me with that, but this is a census thing. If we had 50,000, we'd have 3.
Yeah. So Karen,
I've done this for 12 years, you know?
I understand. You were appointed by council, me,
Yes.
to serve. I didn't have to do that. I could have picked somebody else.
As I recall, you said, the one and only
Right.
Karen Angelou, when you were not going to do it for me. Do you remember that
I
one,
do,
too?
I do.
Yeah.
But again, I could have done something else, and I didn't. So, but what I'm searching for is the ability for other members of council to be able to sit on MORPC, whatever. And we know already that that's happening. And who knows, Nancy might want to get involved in something. How do we document and put it on our agenda? That's what I'm searching for. Do we expand upon the representatives under L, or do I create another category that says other committees as assigned? Other
Well-
committees and organizations.
Well, you can go to the, let's talk about our people that are going to the places where we have our schools, okay? Anybody can show up there. And anybody can show up at a thing at Morpsey as well. And I know that there are things that, there are many people that are on certain committees, but they're not, it's not the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission and the people that are representing the city of and, you know, it's just,
So which way are you arguing? Are you arguing for another heading on the agenda, or are you?
I think another set of committees, that's fine.
Okay.
You can tell the committee that they're, I mean, I'm just saying for the, how this is, runs is the fact that it's based on the census. If we had 50,000, we would have 3. We have 36,000, we have 2.
I understand what you're saying. The competition on that, and this is just the sound as your argument, is that we have other members of council that are going to sit and serve, like Mr. Weaver, on a Morpsey committee. By the definitions of the council rules of procedure, it goes under item L. What I'm searching for is the ability, but to Ray's point, I can't just willy-nilly stick it on there because it just says these 4 things. So what is the will of council? Otherwise, if we're not going to reach a consensus on this and an understanding, we're going to continue with the way I've been doing agendas. So I'm asking for help. Yes.
What if you just put like a L, rename or re-letter them and put M, other representatives or committee reports as
As assigned.
by the president of council. And then that would encompass not only another representative, but if you, like if you did another committee or on anything, and then we would have a place for it.
I'm totally open to that.
If I may, I think that what Ms. McGregor is suggesting
We've done that.
gives you what you were looking for more room to possibly grow in the future if we have other committees, if we
Yes.
want to do other, report other things other than just these 4.
Right.
So I think that's the way that I'm leaning personally.
Okay, having a separate, just
Yeah.
like, yeah, and you know, and for an example, maybe I should stop being in the abstract, but perhaps, what if in the future, we want to have a representative on the Gahanna Historical Society? Or, what's that? Yeah,
We
or-
already have one on
Go
our.
to Jefferson Township meetings, assign somebody
Yeah.
officially to go
Township.
to
Right.
Yep.
Jefferson Township, that would be a good
I mean,
one.
that's-
But where do we stick it on our
Right.
agenda?
I-
And that's what I'm asking.
I think where there's confusion is who is a voting member of, for example, CIC or MORPC versus what a council assigned representative is. I'm a council assigned representative to school board. I'm not a formal voting, that doesn't make me a formal voting member of school board. I don't see why we can't edit or amend L to add additional representatives or additional categories. I also see this as, like I said, I think it's very clear in our rules that this agenda shall be at president's discretion.
I took that and as maybe we don't have item K, motions and resolutions. Maybe we don't have, you know what I mean? But what I'm understanding is that I don't have the ability to do what I want. Okay, so we're then in agreement that an additional heading that we'll create on there will be, and it'll say other committees, other representatives and committees as assigned. Does that sound fair? Sound good?
Maybe other
We'll tweak it. I'll send it in an email.
committee and representative reports as or something.
Committee representative, yes.
L5, that should be L5.
All right.
Oh, just make 5 under L?
Yeah, make it L5. What Councilwoman McGregor said, I liked her terminology, it was good.
Okay,
I like that Historical Society too being on.
yeah. I don't understand why we don't have that, to be honest with you. Okay, so I think I've got input. I'll put it down in an email to council.
To your point, that's very kind, but you couldn't have every group be represented. You'd have the Soccer Association, Historical Society.
No, I understand.
Wait a minute,
do
all
all that.
those work. Let's just do
Yeah.
that.
And that's a really good point. What I'm trying to say is that when there's a need, we should probably have.
Sure.
And I think we're developing in our discussions that we might be getting closer to a need.
And quite honestly, we have made many times, we'll put 3 people on a committee to go and do something, okay? And, we don't always give a report, but we give, maybe at the end, we come up with all the things we should have done at the end. So that's a whole different ballgame than what's
Right.
been happening.
Good, okay. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thomas Jefferson did talk about this. He talked about that, the day-to-day, how did he phrase it? He said something about the day-to-day machinations of government is just boring. He's one of my heroes, by the
This
way.
is rubber meets the road
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
government, so let's get us down to where we really are.
All right, Director Burry.
Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
We're going to go through the 2021 year-end report. Just going to hit on the highlights. So we're going to start with the general fund, but before we begin, I just want to kind of make a blanket that for all funds that receive income tax revenues, it outproduced our expectations, and we're going to hit on that later on in the report. We'll just talk about income tax in general. So as we're going through, I may skip in the individual sections talking about income tax, but we'll address that at another point. So starting with the highlights that are on page 1, general fund revenues, and these highlights are all pulled from the statements that begin on page 5. So if you're ever curious where I start beginning talking about the highlights, they come from the statements that are in there beginning on page 5. So looking at general fund revenue, first looking at how it tracked versus what was budgeted. So we did receive 20% more than what we were planning. A large part of that was due to income taxes. Some other items to note is intergovernmental revenue. We received 34% more than we had planned. This is mainly local government fund revenue. It's all based on the state's health. So this is kind of telling us that the state's recovering very well. On interest and interest earnings, we received 39% more than planned based on securities that matured. And then if you remember, in 2021, we also added commercial paper, which tend to yield a higher rating than Star Ohio and some of the treasuries. On other taxes, we received 22% more. This is basically our lodging tax. So this is showing that there's some relief in the hospitality sector of the economy. Looking at 2021 compared to 2020, starting on page 2, there was a 4% increase over 2020, a little bit more than 1 million. Again, a lot of that related to income tax. There are a couple other items to note in there. Fines and fees and charges for services, you'll notice there was a decrease compared to 2020, but we tracked really well compared to the budget. That was that movement of items that we had talked about before. They were previously in the general fund. We had capacity in the special revenue funds based on COVID cancellations and restrictions. It created some unanticipated on-reserve fund balances that we were able to use. So we were able to move some things over in 2021, explaining those decreases. Again, intergovernmental revenue up, thanks to LGF. Interest and investment income, even though it was up, you'll see a decrease compared to 2020, and that was expected based on our securities and the yield. And then again, looking at other taxes, they were down, but again, we received more than we anticipated. And also looking at a comparison of just the first quarter from 2020 to 2021, there was a sharp decline in the first quarter of about 62%. And then looking at just the fourth quarter, 2020 to 2021, there's a 90% increase. So kind of showing how that recovery is kind of going for hospitality and lodging. Next, we'll address general fund expenditures. Not much on the budgetary side. We're about 84% of budget for actual, but then when you include encumbrances, it's about 91%. That's reasonable for the end of the year. In comparing it to 2020, there was a 5% increase, mainly driven by salaries and benefits. During 2020, we didn't fill some positions and had some vacant.
I'm sorry, Director. Madam Chair, if I may, briefly. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any chance we could pull this up for the public?
That's what we were just trying to figure
Oh, I'm
out,
sorry.
whether or not
Okay.
that would make sense to do.
I was so enraptured by the words and looking at my own device that I didn't see the
Would
cross
you find that helpful to
conversation.
have it up there? Because I think,
Well, I think so, and I'd
Mr.
take to heart the comments from
Sure.
council last week, so that would be,
sure.
thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Sorry.
You
The
go ahead and
print
go
is
to
going to be
page 2.
small, so it's going to be harder to see, but that's what we were debating just now.
Beggars can't be choosers. We got it up there, right?
Next page. The actual page number 2. And you could scroll down so it's just general fund expenditures that are showing. That's where we're at now. Okay. So during 2020, we had pretty much a freeze. We didn't fill some positions. We didn't have some new positions that we wanted to create due to COVID. So in 2021, we started filling those positions. We also had some basic increases that were part of the budget. And then there was a spike in public safety overtime. There were a couple reasons for that. One, as the city reopened, they were still dealing with some COVID leave situations, and then staffing shortages kind of drove that overtime. Materials and supplies are down. That's, again, that movement of activities from the general fund to the special funds. And then we had an increase in contract services. We previously discussed that there was a CIC land bank payment that was made in 2021. We didn't make any payments there in 2020. And then again, capital outlay, that'll just continue to decrease as those old encumbrances are whittled down. We did have some activity, sorry, page 3 now. Did have some activity that was a little bit different for debt service. You'll see the first payment was made on the judgment bonds, seeing that principal there. And then interest actually decreased, and that's related to the refinancing of the bands. So we paid the interest on those when we paid them off, and then we had our first semi-annual payment for the judgment bonds. So that's why even though we issued the bonds in 2020, we didn't have an interest payment until 2021, we did have a portion of interest that was paid in 2020.
Joanne, when you said in the paragraph at the top of the expenditures that when encumbrances are considered, their expenditures were 91% of planned, is that specifically referencing the debt service that you identify in this last bullet point? Or is there additional encumbrance that is?
It's all the outstanding encumbrances that we have across various, there weren't any left in debt service, so it was not tied to that at all. It was just the open purchase orders for all the other activities within the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Going down to other financing sources and uses, you'll see a decrease there. I think we previously discussed the movement of the police pension transfer. We do receive property taxes for a portion of the police pension. It's obviously not enough. Previously, we would transfer the additional amount that was needed from the general fund. We moved that over to the public safety fund. So taking all of those things into consideration, what was our impact on fund balance? We ended with an increase of about $4 million to $24.2 million. Of that amount, that's the 1.9 reserve for encumbrance that was mentioned earlier. And then we also have the 5.9 million reserved for emergency. That leaves us an unreserved fund balance of about 16.3 million, which is about 9 months of operations, way higher than the 2-month minimum that we have set by policy. And I will just briefly go through some of the other funds that receive income tax. So the Public Safety Fund, again, that excess revenue above what we had budgeted related to income tax. As far as expenditures, very close to what was planned. We're about 94%. That's where you would expect to be. You'll notice there was a slight decrease when looking at 2020, and that's just we had to backfill an SRO position. And again, hitting on the transfer increase, that's related to the police pension. Ended with about 600,000 in fund balance, and of that amount, the full amount is unreserved. Parks and Recreation side, very similar story, except we also rebounded nicely with charges for services. You'll notice a large increase there as we were able to open. It was a reduced season, but still very successful. On the expenditure side, even though we had a pretty decent season, you'll notice that we were at about 63% of planned. There are two things that kind of played into that. One was the reduced programming, but also we were having trouble bringing on seasonal staff. We didn't get as many applications. We weren't able to fill some positions. So that kept the cost kind of down below what we were anticipating. We ended with about 1 million, and of that amount, there's about 77,000 sitting in reserve for encumbrance. On the public service side, very similar story with revenue. You also notice, though, because we moved some of those activities over, there's also increases in some other revenue streams beyond just the income tax. On the expenditure side, right around 81% of plan, but there was some sitting on open POs, again, reserved for encumbrance. With that, we're about 94% of what was planned. And there was some significant increases, but again, the movement of the additional activities. Ended with a fund balance of about 1.1 million, and 313,000 is reserved for encumbrance. On the capital improvement fund, again, income tax outproduced. On the expenditure side, we're about 34%, but encumbrances account for the full amount that was budgeted. And compared to 2020, we're at an increase of about 2.4 million, and we just had more projects planned in 2021 than we did in 2020. We ended the year with fund balance of about 17.8 million, and of that, 13.4 million is reserved for encumbrance. So we'll kind of go past the statements. We've kind of hit on all the information that was in there with the highlights. The next thing that you'll see on page 10 is all the other funds. This is just a brief summary of what beginning fund balance was, revenue that came in, expenses, what the cash balance was, what was reserved for encumbrance, and then what our unreserved balances are. The next few pages, pages 11 to 24, is just all the individual account detail. We're not going to go over anything in here. That's just for your review. So next we'll hit on the income taxes, which is on page 25. So with income taxes, again, still makes up the largest part of our revenue stream for the general fund, the 3 special funds, and the capital improvement fund, showing a breakdown of how that was distributed, about 61% to the general fund, 29% capital improvement, and then the remainder to the 3 special revenue funds. The allocation for the special revenue funds, again, is generated by what we're anticipating the net cost of those funds to be. You'll notice in the 3 areas that we collect income tax for, that kind of shows where the increases were. The main driver of the increases for 2021 was the net profit tax, followed by withholding and then individual taxes. So in just looking at everything in general, it looks great, right? We exceeded our expectations, and not only did we exceed our expectations, but we exceeded some pre-pandemic levels. Of course, as with normal financial news, that comes with some cautions, right? First, the fact that the biggest part of the increase was in the net profit. It's probably not going to continue into the future. You know, businesses are going to address their business models. They're going to make capital investment. They're going to change the way they're doing things to bring those tax obligations into a limit that they're comfortable with. There's also some windfalls that may have been occurred in 2020 because what we received in net profit for 2021 is driven by their 2020 net profits. So you think about the technology, the personal protective equipment, the sanitizing, the cleaning, all of those companies probably experienced higher growth than they were anticipating for that year. Demand just went obviously through the roof. The second area of caution, again, is the refund piece of the equation. So there's still, the Ohio Supreme Court has not heard the case yet that is being challenged related to 2020 withholdings. So if you remember in 2020, when the emergency legislation was passed, directed employers to withhold as if the employee was still reporting to work, and the individuals would not be able to claim a refund. So that's the piece that's being challenged in the courts. With the state budget bill, the state basically said you can continue to withhold in that manner. However, individuals, you will be able to claim a refund. As we come into 2022, we're back to the initial Ohio Revised Code that says that after 20 days of providing services or working in a municipality, an employer should start withholding for that municipality. We don't know how many employers are going to be ready to accomplish this. They did have 2021 to kind of get prepared, but we're not sure how many will fully be able to do this. So there could be continued refunds through 2021, 2022, potentially back to 2020, depending on how the court case goes. So we're not sure what that looks like for us, so that's kind of one of those numbers that Rita is keeping track of items as they're coming in, but we won't fully know until we could look at some trending, and that's pretty much what 2022 is going to be. Kind of looking at income tax, how it's coming in, are we seeing some better trends, things that we can kind of forecast out. So with that, as we mentioned during the budget process, we'll probably see net profit come down. We'll probably see withholding go up because we still are having economic growth. The two will probably net each other out. So we're still planning either zero or modest growth as we're kind of moving forward. On the investment side, still keeping our maturity low. Interest rates are starting to move in the right direction. They're not quite where they were pre-pandemic. Good news is there'll be some rate hikes in 2022. It's a full year earlier than they were planning. How many and the amount of those hikes are still uncertain because of the inflation, but we'll at least have one, they're thinking possibly three during 2022, which is also good news. I mean, that's really signifying that recovery is happening a lot faster than everybody thought. So again, as we kind of wrap up, just again, going to keep on looking at those trends that are coming in, see if we could start forecasting a little bit better. And then as we're also moving into 2022, you know, we have a lot of initiatives that are going to help all of us make better decisions for the city, creating a plan for us to take forward. We have the strategic plan refresh, the Parks Master Plan update, facilities being laid out in the capital improvement plan. So you have some exciting things coming so we could really show how we're using these dollars to the best of our ability. I'll be happy to take any questions now.
We're smiling.
Mr. Renner?
Joanne, thank you. You always give an excellent presentation about this, and thank you. I know we say this all the time, but thank you for taking care of our finances. Back on page where it gave the breakdown of all the other items, page 10, the ARP. Do we have a list of things that we're gearing towards the use of the American Recovery funds?
Yes, if you refer to the budget book, there's actually a section that lays out how we're going to be
Okay,
using
so
those
we're
areas.
still on that plan then?
Correct, we have not made any amendments to that plan
Okay,
at this point.
okay. Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? None? All right. Thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Okay, you've got two ordinances on next, ORD 0013 and ORD 0014.
So I have, let me see which one I'm supposed to be doing first. Oh, they both say the same thing. So I think the first one that you have is related to an ordinance that was passed in 2021. Is that the correct one that I'm on? Yeah. So in 2021, ordinance 0048-2021 was passed. So when finance receives the legislation, we're looking for some keywords in the titling that tells us that there's a supplemental in there, so we can go ahead and get it posted. When this particular action came through, it was listed as approval to enter into a contract, so we just missed that also within that legislation was the approval for a supplemental appropriation. Parks and Rec, early on in 2022, they were going through their projects and their POs and realized that the $16,000 wasn't posted. Unfortunately, we had already closed everything out. So we're just asking to appropriate that money now in 2022, as was intended in 2021, to cover some inflationary costs related to the splash pad.
Any comments or questions from council? All right. I do not see that as requesting any type of emergency or waiver.
No,
on
it
that
could just go
item.
normal legislation.
Okay, so I'm just on for first reading. No need to come back. Okay,
Then consent.
consent for first read, yeah,
No, after,
yeah.
when it comes back. I mean, after the second reading would be consent.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Consent agenda for second? Okay, consent agenda. All right, the next item?
The next item is related to our self-insurance workers' comp program. Very successful program, has saved the city thousands of dollars over the years. During 2022, we kind of knew that we were going to see some increased costs. So there's, in addition to the claims, there are 3 contracts that we enter into for the self-insurance. There's an assessment we pay to the Bureau of Workers' Comp that kind of covers their administrative costs of our self-insurance program. Then there's the third-party processor for our claims, and then there's also excess or loss coverage that we purchase. So we kind of knew those were all going to kind of go up. One, though, exceeded higher than anticipated, which was our assessment to Bureau of Workers' Comp. That's based on our claims experience, and in 2021, we had higher than the normal claims experience. Miranda is here if you have any questions regarding the specific claims themselves, but that's pretty much what drove the increase. The other contracts did increase slightly, so it's just requiring a supplemental appropriation so we could meet all those requirements for $38,000. I am requesting a waiver of second reading for this one. We do have a pending invoice for the stop loss, and we don't want to have any gaps in coverage, so.
What was that under? Where was this on the agenda?
Item, under C, it's the third item under C.
The 14?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure I was on the right thing. And so there was $16,000, and then it went, did you say 38? Did I miss that?
No, so our assessments for the Bureau of Workers' Comp came in $35,000 higher than the previous year, and it was driven by our claims experience in 2021, which was higher than normal. So that's the big chunk of the request for the supplemental.
Got it now, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, it'll be on for first reading with waiver of second on regular agenda. Thank you, Director Burry. All right, Director Crawford. We have 3 items under the items from the Department of Public Service and Engineering. 3 motions, motion 0005, motion 0006, and motion 0007. I will let you take them in the order and/or grouping in which you'd like to present them.
Hello again. I think I have them in the correct order that's shown on the agenda, so I apologize if it's not. So the first item I have for you this evening is permission to bid the Big Walnut Fiber Loop Redundancy Project. So this project would install roughly 7,500 feet of conduit and fiber, as well as utilize an existing 5,200 feet of conduit that we installed as part of Big Walnut Trail Section 4. So during the design of Big Walnut Trail Section 4, we identified the pedestrian bridge going over the Big Walnut.
Hold on just a second.
Microphone.
We have an audio problem.
Can you hear me? Oh,
There you go.
it's too far away, I guess.
Okay, sorry, Grant, thank you.
No, that's my fault. Would you like me to start over?
No, I think you were just, no, go ahead and
All right.
pick up where you were.
So during the design of the Big Walnut Trail Section 4 project, we identified the pedestrian bridge going over the Big Walnut as an opportunity to add conduit to assist in creating that redundant connection at a later date, which is now. So the Big Walnut Fiber Loop Redundancy Project would create a redundant connection for our fiber network across the Big Walnut Creek that we currently do not have. With this redundant loop, it creates redundancy for city services, safety services, as well as businesses utilizing the fiber network. This has been a very active topic of discussion recently with the addition of the communication center off of West Johnstown and South Stigler, and ensuring that they have adequate redundancy in their communications for those emergency services. It has also been a topic of discussion with the new Intel project going in New Albany, as well as the existing data centers out there. Today, I think we have had 3 carriers come through town with the goal of reaching New Albany. Currently, there is really only one good connection across the creek, across the Big Walnut. So adding this redundancy loop would open the door for us to explore potential lease options or sale options to carriers that are looking to go out east to the Intel project, the data centers out there, or anything else that may be coming in the very near future. The project has been reviewed and recommended by our internal fiber management committee. So we are respectfully requesting a motion to bid out this project.
Any potential to share the infrastructure costs with some of the other expected users?
There hasn't been any identified as of yet, but we are anticipating that there may be more coming along. So through a lease or a sale of fiber or conduit, that would be a way for us to receive revenue and recover the costs that we are investing into this.
Any other questions? Mrs. McGregor?
This is a great idea that you guys thought of that when we did the bridge.
Thank you.
Good job.
Anything, Mr. Renner? No? Good.
It's
All
fine.
right. So motion would only require, I think, to be on the agenda once, and it would be on consent? Okay. All right. The next item?
Yeah, I'd like to start off by introducing Dan Wilson, our operations manager. Dan has been with us for going on 2 years now. One of the very first projects that Dan kicked off for us was running with the streetlight painting program that we began back in 2018. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to, one, introduce Dan to you all formally, as well as give him an opportunity to present on the hard work that he's been doing over the past 2 years.
Yes, we're requesting permission to bid the streetlight painting for 2022. The program began in 2018. All the streetlights were rated throughout the city. Around 75% of the streetlights needed to be painted. And with funding from issue 12, we had a pilot program in 2021. And in that program, we painted Fine. They told me.
Your voice was projecting so well.
So it's better now?
Yes.
Yes.
That's too much. So last year in 2021, in the pilot program, we painted around 150 streetlights. And in '22, we plan to paint right around 300 streetlights on the west side of Gahanna. This is the area that had the highest concentration of the poor rating as far as painting goes. And the entire program, we think, will take around 5 to 8 years. We are respectfully requesting permission to bid 2022 streetlight painting program.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
What was the cost of the pilot program for the 150 poles?
I think it was right around 40,000.
Okay,
It's about $283 per streetlight.
fantastic.
Not to be particular.
That was particular.
Any other questions?
No, it was amazing to watch them do that, though. It was like, at first they were down by the historical site on South High Street. I thought, what are they doing with the ladder? There's these guys walking around with paint cans and a ladder. So then I watched them, and it was pretty
They
interesting.
did
to
a
see.
good job, didn't they?
They did do a good job.
Yeah.
Actually, Councilwoman, we were discussing this morning, and I remembered your comment last year when we had painted the streetlights about how nice they looked. And, you know, it is kind of one of those low-hanging fruit projects, but it is one that does instill a sense of pride in our community. And it is so important because it's something that our residents can visually see immediately. It's something that it's like putting a fresh coat of paint on your house. So we're very excited to be able to finally bring that program forward.
Broken windows.
That's right.
If I may, just out of curiosity, how many streetlights are there in Gahanna? Like, what is you said we're doing 300 this
I
year?
want to say there's like
You know?
1,800,
Correct.
something. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right around there, little less than 2,000.
What's the lifespan of how long do they last until they need to be redone again?
The actual paint?
Yeah.
I think right around 8 years, 8 to 10 years, depending on where they are and how much sunlight they get, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I guess sorry, Madam Chair, thank you. As a follow-up to Ms. Padova's question, then this would take 5 to 8 years to complete the program. Have we given thought to just creating an ongoing fund? We just do X many lights per year?
I believe that would be the plan.
Okay.
Yes. 'Cause once we get done, once we hit everybody, we'll have to go back and do them all over.
Well, right.
Start over.
Right.
You could take a year off.
Take a year off.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consent, everybody good with consent? All right. Consent agenda for that item. Item number 3, the municipal landscape maintenance contract.
Yes. So Ameriscapes, our current contractor, has provided us a notice of contract termination to be effective within 30 days. The company, which happens to be located in Jefferson Township, has stated they decide to close their doors after 22 years of business due to a variety of factors. So based on this notice, we do need to solicit bids again for this contract. Because of the timing of this contract, we will likely come back with an emergency and waiver to actually award the contract after competitive bidding. The contract does follow our standard term contract, which is 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. So we are respectfully requesting permission to bid this contract.
Comments, discussion? Mrs. McGregor?
It probably doesn't have to do exactly with this, but when we came into town tonight, we noticed that the pilot, like right at Hamilton and 270, the lady who did the studies with the trees, a lot of them are missing. Were they not growing, or was that her choice, or do you know why they're not missing?
So don't quote me on this, but, and Parks may have a better answer to this, but they installed a whole lot of the trees, like a bunch of the
Right.
trees, and there was too many to be survivable. So the ultimate goal was to thin it out and relocate them to other locations. So I'm not sure if that is the step that's occurring right now and why they appear to be missing at this point. I don't actually have that answer, but
Okay.
I do know that was the ultimate thought with it.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Could you get some more information on that for us?
I can
Thanks,
reach out to Parks.
thanks,
We will follow up with that.
thanks.
All right. Also on consent? Okay. Item, motion 0007 for consent agenda.
If I could, I just wanted to also add, when that contract, once we bid this contract and then we bring that, whatever the winning contract is, forward for approval, just to give you a heads up, we will need an emergency waiver on that so that we can get them started on the work right away. Oh, did you say that? Did I miss that? I think I was texting Stephanie to ask about the trees in the median. Sorry, Grant.
Mike was on.
Get those hearing aids.
I was worried about the trees.
I was paying attention, see?
Thanks, Ray.
Last item on our agenda for tonight. Mr. Weaver has presented a resolution recognizing and honoring theater in our schools month. It's identified as RES 0009, and the text is included in the text is included on the, on Granicus, on Legistar. Any discussion, any comments, Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just by way of quick introduction, received some comments that some other communities were doing similar resolutions and proclamations, and just given the tremendous theater program that we have at GLHS, of which I'm a proud alum and myself, this seemed like a really great opportunity to celebrate at least one facet of our education system that is finally getting back to normal a little bit here. We saw some pretty innovative and creative ways for students to get on the stage and perform and continue their learning, but it's certainly, you know, with smaller cast sizes and masks and distancing, and you just can't do a lot of the same performances that you would like to, and a lot of that artistic integrity is, I don't want to say lost, but challenged, and you had to get creative. And so it's my hope that next week some students, as well as the director of the GLHS theater program, will be here to join us and just share some of their experiences, what they've gone through over the past couple of years, and you know, celebrate this month for them. And feel free to share any questions, comments, concerns, misplaced commas, etc.
This is a really good thing. Thank you. And the person that leads that is so good.
Thank you.
She's just great.
Can I ask a question? Thank you for doing this, but is this a common way to spell theater? That's a British spelling, isn't it?
So yeah, we are very touchy about how we spell theater in the theater world.
Okay.
So yes, this is commonly how we will spell the performance of theater. In a theater, you would spell in the theater THEATER.
Okay.
So
Just asking.
Learning something new every day.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your work on this, Mr. Weaver. All right, anything else? All right, this adjourns Committee of the Whole for Monday, March 14th. Thank you.
Hear back from Stephanie.